Morning. This is a video for week two, June 6th, or rather June 9th through June 16th. It is for week two, I guess is the best way. And it's more nearly a content video. Before I go to content video, I just want to mention that uh, reviewing your discussion questions, I'm grading them as I see them. I almost always give maximum points for them. If I think that you've missed something, if you're wondering about why you got less than 5 points, or if you haven't seen the grade yet, it'll be because I haven't put it in, or because I thought something might have been missing. If I thought something was missing, or a point that you needed to probably revisit, I'll tell you in a separate email, individual email, and you can certainly have the option to redo it to get the maximum number of points. I would say it would be true for the journal, which is due, I believe, on the 10th. So far, I have one person who's has sent uh, that person's video in, rather that person's journal in, and it was fine. And I expect all the other ones to be fine as well. I think this particular video will help you if you're having trouble pulling that together. Some two more business things, or maybe it's just one. No, two. One would be again. So far, one student has told me what book that she chose to offer as a book report, so to speak. And I was happy to approve it, but I won't. You have to have it approved. Whatever book you choose, whether it's on the list I've given you or whether you found something else, you have to request that I know that you've done it. If you don't know that you've done it, that's a problem. So make sure you just drop me a fast email, and we'll take it from there. And I don't expect anyone to be turned down for the books that they choose, unless you're choosing, I don't know, something totally irrelevant to what the course is about. The other premise too is I'm just not good at certain bookkeeping things, as you may have already figured out, and that is that you need to take do the attendance link. I don't even know where it is in Canvas. I'll find it and post it, but I think most of you know how to do this already. So please take the attendance link. And so that's just Mickey Mouse things that have to be done, so to speak. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post two videos this week with some accompanying documentation. Uh, this one is what I call a content video, and it's based on the two tasks that you have to do the to meet the expectations of the week. One is to have read chapter 3. And now they're cutting my grass outside, so I'm going to shut the window. Plus, it will stop me from sneezing. Cut grass usually makes me sneeze. So what did I just say? Oh, the first one will be a quick video, PowerPoint, bare bones about about Fulham, chapter 3, and also the video that you are expected to have viewed, which is the link I've already provided, I believe, in the module. Certainly it will be on the agenda, but will also be posted today as well, where the agenda gives you the YouTube link for the Talus memo, rather the Talus YouTube. That's features a speech by presentation by Dr. Linda Darling Hammond. So what this PowerPoint will do will just give me a chance to offer my commentary to it. Then there'll be a second video, which I need to watch. It'll be briefer, I hope, and that I'm not sure that will be up today. And that briefer video, more likely tomorrow, that video will also be about additional material. In this case, it would be the beginning of the steps that I will offer you to take insofar as how you can concretely apply. I call it taking it to the streets, apply change premises and skill sets that you're going to need. You don't what you may ordinarily have some of these in your arsenal, in your quiver, if you play with bows and arrows when you were little, but there will also be some things that you have never seen before. Not in this particular video that I'll be posting today, but more likely beginning next week. So that's That's from me. That's from my own research and presentations. I also gave you a bonus video that talks about one of my books. I'm not offering you the bonus video in order to influence you to buy the book. Like I said, uh, I think I get $3 a book from royalties. I don't even think you can get a slice of pizza out of that. It's more important to me that if you decide to read the book for your own professional growth or for this course's completion properly, it will be helpful. That's a money back guarantee. So now we stop talking about that and we go to a really quick video, although I'll probably talk too much and make it longer than it has to be. But don't forget the things I just said. Send me the book you're going to read. I talked about grading, and also make sure that you take attendance, because we all get in trouble if you don't say that you're here. Okay. I'm sharing the video. I'm just going to click through it relatively briefly. As I said, this week, in my view, the academic week begins this coming Monday. Today is Friday, but I was a little impatient. I didn't want you to wait till the last minute, obviously, to do that. If you're ambitious, then you want to move through things. And if I were you, I would be ambitious, because if you're in schools as we speak, everyone knows that June is as pleasant a month as it could be in so many ways. It's also pretty strenuous in lots of ways, lots of expectations. And so the quicker you stay ahead of things, the more happy you will be in terms of successfully completing the course. And so will I. So yes, it's week 2, 6/9 to 6/16, and we're jumping right into Fullen. Fullen's got plenty of books out there, and probably the godfather of all things about change nowadays, and rightfully so. And he's followed closely by Hargraves, who often writes with him. But Fullen, as this book that you're reading now, is more nearly Michael Fullen, and we'll go with that. I may have mentioned that I saw him myself in a presentation maybe about 5 years ago locally, and there must have been 2,000 people there. He was like a rock star, and 2,000 people each had a book, and he signed every book, but he also made 2,000 times his $3, so it was not a bad deal for him. So there we go with Fullen, and then we go over to some points that he makes about what change looks like. And I don't think he does a great job in this chapter in certain respects, but I think it gives you a kind of a mindset that you need to incorporate. That I see. Oh, I also wanted to comment quickly about your choices of standards. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm still kind of trying to process them a little bit more specifically, but I'm finding them interesting. One point that a couple of people made I did not agree with, okay? And it doesn't make you wrong and me right. It just means I have a different opinion. Is that some of you have mentioned that you thought that culture change and leadership change is top down. I don't know if I agree with that. I think it more as a lateral approach myself, and more nearly that the leader can create what we call a flattened hierarchy. More nearly we can do that. I'll give you a quick example of that. It's not on the PowerPoint. Think of a spider web. Spider builds a web and then gets up all the way up on the side of one side of the web, and the web is intended not for the spider to live there as in her living room, so much as to catch other things to eat. So think of it as a spider's kitchen. Maybe a better way to look at it. And so if a fly or an insect is winging around and somehow it gets caught up in the web and the sticky web, the vibration of the spider web ripples out to Mrs. Spider. Mrs. Spider scurries down. I'm shouting because I'm not sure if you can hear the lawnmower. Scurries down to gobble up the fly, the mosquito, whatever it is that they've been lucky enough to capture, because the vibration of the spider web is the hole with a W. I'm smiling at sort of an arrogance here. I apologize. So I love this metaphor that sends a message that it's not top trickle down. It's across as much as possible, which is a little idealistic from me, I think. But needs to be put on the table because there's too many places where uh, somebody thinks they're in charge and doesn't have to ask anybody else, anyone other opinions. That's the way it may still be in lots of schools and school districts, but that isn't the way research seems to be justified. He does quote Deutschman. Deutschman does a nice job talking about change in a general sort of way, and I'm putting glasses on and off because I told you my eyes are still adjusting to a new world for myself, where uh, essentially he's advocating for reframing change. Reframing is an interesting word. Does that mean just moving the chess pieces around the board, or does that mean creating a new board? He asked rhetorically. I would argue for the latter, but it doesn't necessarily or change what the pieces can do. Suppose the king can move all over the board, and the queen can only move one space at a time. How would you change chess to reframe how it plays? That's that's an interesting subject to think about if you've played chess. How would you change any activity to make it radically different from what it is all about? And I use that word radical purposely. And that's what Deutschman argues for, because essentially what he's saying is we're talking about, and I just finished a book 2 days ago by Adam Kahane. I'm going to post, I haven't posted the book. I don't even remember the name of the book off the top of my bald head. But it's about systems change in a totally different way than most people look at changing systems. Okay. Essentially, Kahane is arguing, and so is Deutschman, to a lesser extent. Uh, in order to change a school, you change behavior, which is easier said than done in a 10-minute video. You change behavior. And I would advocate, and that's my phrase in the blue arrow, to supplement what Deutschman is saying. You've got to create experiences where stakeholders begin to generate new ways to realize. Because the old ways to realize just continue to perpetuate the mediocrity that we permit to continue. Lay that back on your video because I think that's pretty solid. Notwithstanding the fact that schools in spotty places have begun to point to be practice new ways to change how people realize as such. So that's Deutschman, and Fullen certainly speaks to what that's about. Then he goes over to systems, and systems is probably one of my favorite words. It doesn't begin with a C, and it is about the system. Stupid. No, I'm not calling you stupid. When Clinton was running for president, his chief advisor said, "It's about the economy, stupid, and nothing else matters." And people think that's why he was elected as president in 1992. Many of you probably weren't even born then, but I think it's worth repeating, only changing that slogan a little bit and saying it's about the system, plural. Think of yourself as a system. I may have said this last week, I'm not sure. You have a visual system, you have a hearing system, subsystem, you have a skin system, you have a nervous system, a digestive system, a skeletal system, and lots of other things that comprise you. When any one of those systems is misaligned, he shouted, with the rest of the systems, you feel at dis-ease, D-I-S hyphen eased. You don't feel healthy. You're not healthy. I did talk about this last week. I'm just reiterating it. Only when all the systems are in sync and all the systems are healthy does the whole with the W feel systemically healthy, feels healthy and effective. Now, so sit back and think about all the subsystems that make up a school system. I think I'm pretty sure I talked about this a lot the other day. Now, this Kahane book, whose title I can't remember at this moment. And all I have to do is get up and go get the book. But then it'll be more time. You have to watch this an empty screen. Adam Kahane's latest book. I think another book on the reference list I wrote was Transforming Systems, which he wrote. Transformative Scenario Planning is the book that he wrote. It literally changed my professional life. And I speak a lot about that in my latest book, actually all of my books. Anyway, he argues that it's about changing the systems, but we need to remember that systems in our case are made up of people, each of whom brings a difference, and this sounds very esoteric, but you need to realize this, each of whom brings a different viewpoint of reality. I might have mentioned last week when I took over a building, I mentioned to my faculty, I was new to them. I said, we're gonna have a fire drill today about 2 o'clock. And a couple of teachers came up to me at the end of the meeting and said, well, what side of the hallway do you want us to walk on? And I asked them what side of the hallway they thought was best. And I said, uh, what do you think? And they were shocked. And one of them said, you mean you want to know what we think? I said, of course I want to know what you think. I mean, I know what I think, but I want to hear what you think. And it was a shock to their systems, I can tell you, because my previous principal in that building was a very effective principal in many ways, uh, in most ways, uh, was extremely unilateral, top down, and I was not. I knew how to be top down when I needed to be, but it wasn't as though it was my first decision-making process as such. And so and it took a while for people to realize that I'm trying to empower them to think with me and think for me sometimes, so that we could pride each other, we could catalyze each other to begin to rework how we work with children in that building, which actually came out pretty well, although that school was a great school before I took it over. I don't want to take credit when I don't deserve it. So what we're looking at is changing within the systems within so people perceive differently, hopefully perceive together. That's called shared vision. But also allowing, as Peter Senge would say, for opportunities to dialogue when people had different ways of looking at things. So yeah, it's about systems, but it's about the people who make up the systems and getting in between their ears and helping them uh, change their lenses, like I just did, even though I can't even see the screen without my wife's glasses on. Enough said. So Fulham does a very good job talking about that and continues with it throughout the book. And he also I certainly give him credit for this premise, and that would be he also spends a lot of time in chapter 3 about capacity building. Sometimes we expect each other to do things we're not capable of doing, not because we haven't got the muscles or the brains, okay, or the money necessarily, but because we haven't had a chance to build towards those things. We do that all the time. We forget that. Say, come on, all right, let's do this, that, and the other thing. And teachers say, oh, wait a minute, you want me to use this computer? I don't even know how to turn it on. Well, you need to build the capacity. Well, it's your job as the leader to co-build that capacity with them, so they begin to experiment with each other and find new ways to make use of these little guys with the screens and the keyboards. Which brings me to the premise of technology, only because it's a good example. When I'm talking about technology capacity from 2 points. One is learning how to use technology. There's just too many things out there to ignore that can contribute to some true change, except we don't do it as nearly as well as we probably could. And then there's the premise of just having the capacity to look at technology as an innovation. At one time, I actually did this in an interview, and I got hired after I said this. It was a technology-based university, and they said, "What do you think about technology?" And I said, "Well, I think technology is the same as a piece of chalk when Fred Flintstone was teaching something." And everybody went, "Oh my God, oh my God!" And then someone said, "Wait a minute, he's right." I was right, and I got offered the job, but turned it down for other reasons. But the bottom line is, uh, technology is a change, capital C change, because it's so pervasively available for us, hopefully, to do the right thing. But it's about embedding, embracing, integrating that among what we do. When COVID hit, suddenly everybody was online. Too many teachers, well, two points of view at least. Three things. Too many teachers didn't know how to use the technology, haven't been trained on it. Well, that's mistake number one. In many cases, the technological systems for communication and learning, to put it politely, weren't very good. And the third piece was the students just weren't used to learning that way. And you put all those things together, and it's you're building a plane, flying a plane while you're building it, to use an old slogan, and things go crazy. It goes crazy, or the plane crashes, and then people say, "Oh, that change didn't work." It's not because the change didn't work, it's because we didn't feed technology into an integrated, systemically thoughtful process of acclimation and then into creation of new premises to do it. So what do? We do what I'm doing now, do talking heads. Even with first graders, we do talking heads. Not good. But Fuller does a great job at that. He talks about professional capital as the keystone to change. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And so the process that Fullen speaks to, broadly speaking, is has some components to it. Small, ambitious piloting. Pilot's an important word. You don't go whole hog with a process change for everybody. If you ever saw a picture of a pilgrim with a blunderbuss who's trying to shoot the turkey for Thanksgiving, and there's just a bunch of shotgun pellets spraying out and probably destroying the turkey totally, and making it inedible. It's because we try to do something whole hog, to mix metaphors, instead of trying to do something ambitiously in a small way. All industry manufacturers know this. Now, manufacturers make cars, they make sorry, they make washing machines. I know that. They're not people. I get that. But the premise is the same. You start small to make sure that if there is a defect in your change process, you can adjust it without making a million cars whose wheels fall off. By the way, that used to happen back in the day. Above all, in my view, and I think that's even more important than the piloting advice, is that would be always center it on achievement and learning. That's the keystone. It's got to be that. If it's not about achievement and learning, then you're wasting your time in this kind of conversation. As I said before, it's needed to have whole system reform that's been changed inside out, not necessarily top down, although there are some examples where you could argue for that. Capacity cubed, capacity has to be a keystone of whatever change you put in and how you feed it back to stakeholders so they can make it their own. Also requires a lot of communication. That's why I call it the communication permeation, up and down, inside out, back and forth. Not top down necessarily, maybe to begin with, but more important to get it among folks and also from the bottom up to you as leader. And yes, you have to have accountability. You can't just say, well, this new reading program is the answer to our prayers, and then find out 3 years later that nobody can read, which has happened a lot, especially in the city school systems, because the idea of accountability and evaluation has been left out. That's a terrible mistake. And this is a blank screen. We'll get rid of that later. And then we go over to Hammond. And again, I'm not giving you, no, I'm not telling you everything to read in chapter 3. I'm just giving you I'm accenting some points for you. I found the Hammond video interesting. Every time I watch it, I enjoy it. I certainly uh, admire Linda Darling Hammond. And there's a but coming on this one. That video is 10 years old. If you listen to that, I'm sorry for the quality of the tape of the slide. I don't have time to fix it yet. The quality of this, that's a 10-year-old video. Well, that's ancient history. And there's so many things that she says and the introductory speaker says that are not true today. If I remember correctly, Hammond congratulates the Federal Education Department, which no longer exists. I'm not laughing at that. I'm lamenting it. You see the word lamentation on the bottom. And the grants that were out there for research have been dried up. And the grants that were set up to remediate some of the terrible issues of learning and poverty that we have been taken away within the last 6 months, which isn't to say that the money sometimes that was invested in some of those grants and some of those initiatives was well spent. I'm not going to deny that, but I will say that uh, the wanton act of uh, reorganizing the emphases or eliminating the emphases that the education department has had in place and it had been beginning to grow into in the last 10 to let's say 15 years is at best threatened, if not at worst uh, dead on arrival. So that's a problem. Nonetheless, she talks about Hammond talks about some good things here. She talks about this teaching and learning instructional survey thing that went out, I think, 15 years ago. And she also talks about PISA. And I never remember what PISA stands for. I'm not good at these things, but it's a global test that's administered to just about every country in the world. And she makes an important point that the United States is maybe in the top of the back half of achievement in math and science. There's lots of reasons for that. I mean, we haven't got time to belabor that now, but there are lots of reasons for that and explanations for it. Some of the schools that are at the top of the list, very exclusive. Not every child is taught. There's lots of ways to look at this, but certainly it is kind of alarming that we are not higher up that graph level that you see there. Even though the PISA test data she's showing you is pretty old. Okay, so but you keep that in the back of her mind because some of the consequences that she comes out with are strong, and the graphs that she's got, especially in 10 minutes and 45 seconds. Go back and look at that again because there's some very strong research-based substantiated points there. Essentially what she's saying, and I can point out tons of other articles, and I will probably point out at least one article. I will do that, okay, and post it in maybe not in this module this week, but in the following week. That strongly shows how resource allocation adversely or positively affects equity and achievement. It's clean as a whistle. There's no argument about this. Okay. And since the United States allocation per student is, when you compare it to the rest of the world, is misrepresented as being a lot of money when in fact it's not in terms of how it proportionally is allotted as such. It could also be that the money that because people do feel as though there's lots of money that goes into education. I don't disagree with that. Uh, but it could be misappropriated. I think it is misappropriated. Uh, Maybe there are too many administrators. I don't believe that myself. Or there were too many people with their hands in the pie trying to pull out the plum or the pie, whatever it is. There's probably some truth to that. Uh, but the research is very clear on that. The poorer the schools, the more likely the achievement will not be what we want it to be, notwithstanding the social and economic issues that the community may be suffering. The schools aren't doing what it needs to do to make that right. And that's clean. And unfortunately, it's clean, I think. She also pointed out that it seems to show the American teachers work harder with less or appropriated development because we're living within a factory model. We haven't changed our basic way of teaching. I'm sorry, we're organizing a school since around 1900. Let's go secondary for the moment. In secondary, we're talking about 40-minute periods most of the time. I know there are schools that don't do that anymore. They go block or have a rotated kind of period approach, which I applaud, but the majority are factory model. Uh, For the longest time, there were K-8 and 9-12 distributions of kids. Uh, but then it went to around K5, K6, and 7, 8, 9, or 6, 7, 8, and then 9, 12, 8, 12, 9, 12 in high school. And that's being actually questioned as we speak. And there are some schools, uh, if you've had Dr. Koza and have read a multi-grade classroom book, which I recommend highly, and I think it's actually in one of the readings we have, you can see there are other ways to do this. I'll be a wise guy and also point out, and I'm sure there's only I think 10 of you in the class, and none of you will remember this, but if you have nothing to do, go to YouTube and look up the Little Rascals, not the Young Rascals. That's a rocker from my age. Go to the Little Rascals with Spanky and Alfalfa. These were little shorts that were made in the 1930s, even in the 20s, I think. And their teacher was a teacher named Miss Crabtree, and she taught in a one-room schoolhouse. And K-8 was all in that one room, and she taught all grades all the time. Somehow they got through it as such. Another way to look at it, maybe one way you might remember more easily, is Little House on the Prairie, which my wife watches and cries at every time she watches. Little House on the Prairie, single room classroom. More importantly, let's talk more about this premise. By the way, again, here's that 1048. Don't forget that, because there's some good material there. I'm just not going to cite it here. And this premise too of less time for collaboration is a major premise. Come on, Richie. Now, I'll give you a quick example. I think it's mentioned in the following slide, but I'll say it here. People wonder why Finland supposedly has an outstanding school system. I don't think it's as outstanding as people would have you believe, but does have many merits to it. And one piece to it, well, one thing people will argue about this is that almost everybody in Finland are Finlandians, which is not true. But probably the majority are native-born Finlandians, although they are getting, and they planned for it, I would tell you, they are getting many more immigrants than they've ever had before. Uh, and they also have a minority population. You may have studied it when you were in the third grade, called Laplanders, which are uh, native Finlandians who live above the Arctic Circle and live off the reindeer and basically live a nomadic life. And those kids get taught too. And a big part of why they do so well is because there's too many things. One is that no person can become a teacher unless they are out of the top 10% of their class, high school class. They won't even accept you into an education system, training program. United States takes teachers, teacher candidates from the top. You ready? 2/3. In this case, we have from the top 10%, and they're vigorously trained in data analysis. And more importantly, in my view, they're vigorously expected to be collaborative in major pieces of what you and I might call prep time. But it isn't as though someone grabs a cup of coffee and sits in the faculty room and complains about the coffee or complains about what the principal did or didn't do. They actively are expected to use the data to examine children's needs and to co-create plans of instruction for those children. There's not even a special education program as such in Finland, the way we understand special education, because of this approach. And so the collaboration, the expectation of collaboration, of exchange, of analysis of data is part of their culture. It's part of their culture. We talked about culture last week. I wish I had more time to hit that harder. I'm going to hit it harder actually tomorrow in the next video. And so that's factory model, and the less time we give people to truly collaborate, maybe because they don't know how to collaborate, we don't know what's expected of them, is a major issue that Hammond speaks to. And then she goes after professional development. I have strong feelings about this. Uh, Many points to make here. One is that a corporation, General Motors, I'll just take that as an example, spends around 25% of its total budget on training their workers. School systems spend less than 2%. Think about that. So professional development, if I knew you better, I would use some more cranky words, is more often than not poorly planned. That's not the words I would want to use. Sometimes, and this I took this phrase from one of my bosses from years ago, it's old wine in new bottles. Somebody, I'll use phonics as an example. In phonics was generally the way most kids my age were taught up to maybe 15 or 20 years ago. And then someone said, well, no, we got to go to whole language. And then you might have read about Lucy Calkins in Columbia, who's now retracted her thinking about whole language, which I think is kind of interesting, although it's not funny, where the school systems over time switched from phonics to whole language approaches. And as a result, students don't read as well as they used to read. And again, I'm laughing sarcastically, not because it's funny. And then someone comes up and says, "Well, okay, well, I have this thing where you sound out things. P.S. It's phonics." And so they say this is the way kids really learn. Although everybody knows that there's lots of ways to teach kids how to read. We just want to find a one size fits all approach, which is always a mistake when you're teaching children. And so what we do is we recycle premises. How many new premises are out there in professional development? Think about the PD you've been forced to take or that you volunteered to take. And think about whether uh, had any sustainable quality. And all too often, and I've been part of this myself, and I get frustrated about it, it's what they call the Lone Ranger. I call the Lone Ranger approach. Now, none of you remember the Lone Ranger unless you wake up middle of the night, put on old westerns. Uh, there was a Western cowboy hero called the Lone Ranger. He wore a mask, and he and Tonto rode all over the West and solved all kinds of issues for people. And at the end of the show, end of this 30-minute show, which was very idealistic and I used to love to watch, uh, someone would say, "Well, who was that man? Who was that masked man?" And then someone else would say, "Well, that's the Lone Ranger." And he'd be riding out of town saying, "Hi ho, Silver," and they'd both be riding off to the next crisis. One-shot deals, in and out. So you bring in a prophet from another land, and I've been treated that way too many times. I always argue that it'd be much better if I came more often, but they don't want to do that. So I come in, I say what needs to be, I think needs to be said. I get on my horse and I ride out of town, often thinking that what I said won't last more than a couple of days unless they bring me back or someone who says some of the same things I say to continue the practice. That uh, the research shows that professional development only has lasting qualities when whatever the skills are that you were taught have been practiced 7 times, repeated 7 times, reimagined 7 times, whatever you think. 7 years in a row teaching the Civil War are different, it's the same way. I don't know, but it's certainly 7 times. So when PD is, I'm dying to use the word that I shouldn't use, so I'm not going to use it. When PD is just poor, you spend money on something you didn't need to spend money on. That's an important point that Hammond reiterates more than once. We've already talked about Finland and this idea of collaboration. And what we didn't talk about yet was supervision. I did mention it in an earlier video. In my view, that's the most important course you can take in this program. Even mine. Okay. And you don't know how to work with to nurture. Here's my favorite phrase. I made this one up. If you don't know how to grow your teachers, to nurture them and encourage them to be better teachers with giving them constructive feedback, or better yet, according to Hammond, not having me observe you Heaven's sakes, I was there with business teachers teaching typing. What did I know about that? It's crazy. Or teaching a language that I couldn't speak. I mean, I understood the premises of the lesson, but I couldn't say whether they were teaching the French nouns properly. I couldn't tell you that. All the more reason to have chairs, uh, as long as everyone has a common understanding of what a quality lesson is about, an effective lesson for achievement is all about. But but according to Hammond, I will give you another name that's kind of a little long in the tooth now in terms of her research. Someone named Madeline Hunter. You have nothing to do, look up Madeline Hunter. Uh, Came up with supervisory models of what they call peer supervision. So instead of Principal Bernardo observing student teacher X, it would be teacher X who have who was trained in the same way the teacher Y was trained about how to observe each other so they could coach each other. Peer coaching is the word. Tough to bring off. Organizationally, it's very difficult to make happen from the administrative point of view. But when there's a will, there's a way to make that all come together. So supervision, feedback is what this, together with the collaboration, those are your two key answers to true instructional change. And that's Hammond. I like that video, although I do think it's shouldn't be used anymore because we have a new premise going on now that's very disturbing, and what I would future for by saying it's going to be a real problem. One of the reasons why you see sometimes now um, more charter schools, and many of you teach in charter schools, is a reaction to the uh, antipathy or the respect they have for regular public school education. Misplaced, but there nevertheless. Another one that was when I was supervising it many moons ago was home teaching. In my mind, that was absolute farce for almost every parent I work with, except maybe for a handful who really did home teach. But now it's becoming a true practice, and maybe it's getting better. I don't have my finger on that pulse anymore. But that's a reaction to distaste or dissatisfaction with what public schools do or do not do. All the more reason to promote change from the public education thing because at least they're publicly funded, and I can do 30 hours on this without blinking an eye. So with that, I'm going to stop the share. The video is always longer than I thought it would think it will be. There will be another video probably tomorrow, more nearly about some futuring premises I want you to, and some other concepts that are not part of the book. But I also reminded you about the journals. I reminded you about your discussion questions. I reminded you about taking attendance and probably something else I don't remember. So have a great weekend. Stay ahead of yourself, seriously, because I want you to be successful with this. I have office hours on Wednesdays. Nobody took me up on it this week, but I'm there every Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. Send me the name of your book you're going to read to. Take care.